when you're on the content creation side of it and you put all of your eggs into this one project going, and then the rug gets ripped out from you after 4 years because an actor's schedule changed and the whole thing just unravels in about 2 days, it's just heartbreaking. And that was the point at which I realized I deserved more out of life. And I just went, I don't want this life anymore. It's been great. I'm so glad I did it. I would have always regretted it if I hadn't tried. I'm really proud of some of the things that I got made, but it's time to turn the page.
Spit that shit out, man! Now it's time to flip the script.
Listen, I went to Maui once to meet up with a boyfriend, and he introduced me to a friend of his. She was she was wearing nothing but a bikini top. She was in her 20s, beautiful, sun-kissed body and sun-kissed woman. And she looked at me and she said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so," whatever her name was. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Hi, I'm Britt." And I reached out to shake her hand because that's how you meet somebody, right? Mm-hmm. She wrapped her arms around my torso and gave me the warmest, most welcoming hug I've ever received from a stranger. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, oh, cool, I can roll with this. I can do, I spent 14 years in California. I can be all about the love. Yeah. I hugged her back. I was feeling it. She was feeling it. And then she kept hugging me. And I was like, okay, now's like where you let go. Yeah. And so I let go. I released the pressure so she would, and no, she kept on hugging me. And then I was like, oh, this bitch is stoned. I get it.
Oh, that's funny. She'd gone into a zone for a little bit.
Oh, she was there.
That's so funny.
Oh, she must have held me for like a minute and a half, AJ. It was so freaking awkward.
Oh my God, I love it.
But the first 5 seconds were great. I'm telling you.
All right, I just got a text from Lee. Let's see what he says.
Okay.
It begs mentioning that today Britt and I are flying solo because Marty's in Pennsylvania. His mom passed away this week, and he's taking care of business there and gathering with his siblings. And he'll be the first one to listen to this episode. So, he knows we love him, and he's doing the right thing, being there, taking care of family and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, amen to that.
Hello.
Lee Clay.
AJ Handegard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you have a lot of timbre in your voice today, I believe.
Well, Marty's not here, so I'm doubling up on the timbre.
You got to carry it for the both of them.
Yeah.
Should I add some timbre to my voice too? Hey, Lee.
Turn my timbre up while you're at it.
That's right. Lee, meet Britt.
Lee,
hi, Britt. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to meet you. Hey, are we calling you in LA?
You are.
Do we have you beat today in temperature? I think we might.
I heard you guys are getting crushed up there right now.
Yeah, we're kind of getting cooked a bit.
Today, tomorrow, and Monday it's going to be in above 100.
Whoa. I saw something today in the news that was saying it was going to be above 100 in Canada. And all I could think was we're all doomed.
That's funny.
Apocalypse.
Yeah. And it's some kind of a high pressure system. I mean, luckily there's a ton of shade and we're surrounded by water. So, I'm curious to see how it feels. We might go out for a surf later today.
Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah. No, today, we had one of those heat domes a couple weeks ago.
You did.
And it got warm here, but not like insane. We've certainly had, days over the last couple of years where, we've had some days that hit like 115.
Mm-hmm. They're saying like 112 to 115 tomorrow possibly, but
wow.
We'll see. Well, I'm curious to see. I was just telling Britt, I'm curious to see how that feels. It's not going to feel like a Las Vegas 115 where you have no shade,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just not
spring.
Right. It's just not that exposed. So, but we'll see. New experiences, man. I'm all about new experiences. So we've got our good friend Lee Clay on the podcast today. And we're talking to Lee for a specific reason, because he's a really cool dude. And he's a dear friend, but he's also had some experiences in the last several years that are kind of interesting. So Lee,
way to sell yourself short, AJ. Kind of interesting.
No. Well, I'm
super duper interesting.
Right. I'm
interesting enough for a podcast, right?
I like to be subtle about these kinds of things, Brett.
All right.
Lee, for many years, is a producer in LA, and he'll tell us a little bit more about that. But he's a producer in Hollywood and had a career change. And he had a really interesting conversation on the Workshopping podcast about this change in life, change in career. And it was really interesting from the nuts and bolts perspective, where they really talked about making a shift like that. But there was something that I'd coincidentally been wanting to talk to Lee about, because he and I both have experienced it to different levels. And that was talking about the emotional and ego challenges of making a big change in life like that, a change in career, a change in identity. And we started touching on it a little bit last week, Brett, on our episode toward the end. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was really the perfect time to talk to Lee. So Lee, welcome. Give us a little bit of your background, man. Tell us who Lee Clay has been and kind of how you got to Hollywood and what you did there for a while.
Oh man, there's a lot of personalities in there over the years.
Yeah, I
know. Well, I guess the kind of elevator Lee Clay life story pitch is was always kind of a really creative kid. Loved the arts, loved acting in high school. Was convinced I wanted to become an actor for a long time. Ended up going to college at SMU because they had a really, really strong theater program at the time. And when I was accepted into that program, I kind of felt like it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. But of course, I had to make a deal with my folks that, if I was going to pursue a degree in the arts, that I also had something a little more practical. So I had always kind of loved, or not always, but I think I bought my first stock like at 16 or something. And I liked the stock market. I liked kind of the organic nature of it, and I enjoyed investing. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll do a finance degree to go with the theater degree. That seems pretty practical. So graduated from SMU with those two degrees, and knew I wanted to come to Los Angeles to work in the movie business. But along the way through college, I kind of figured out that I didn't think that pursuing acting was what I wanted to really do with my life, but I still wanted to do something creative. But I kind of liked this business stuff and wanted to couple the two. So I decided I was going to pursue a career as a producer, and had gotten a lucky break with a first job. Spent about 6 years working at DreamWorks from 2000 to 2006. And spent several of those years working in Steven Spielberg's office. So I got to kind of follow him around and learn from him and all the other amazing people that were in that world over the course of movies like AI and Minority Report. And then around 2006, the person who I was working specifically with, the producer that I was working under, ended up leaving DreamWorks, and all of a sudden I didn't have a job anymore. So I had kind of thought, well, I was raised in this culture of you work for the company for 40 years and you get a gold watch and then you retire. And I had just kind of thought I'll be at DreamWorks forever. So it was a little bit of a rude awakening to all of a sudden find myself going, oh, great. Now what do I do? And I didn't really want to go into development. I just didn't really feel pulled in that direction. And at that point, I felt like I knew what it meant to produce a movie. I'd also worked on a little independent movie called The Chum Scrubber that had been at Sundance as a co-producer. And just felt like now is the time to jump off the cliff and try to start a producing career, or go out on my own, I guess. And so I did. I kind of self-financed that for about 15 years, essentially. And over the period of that time, got, I think, about 12 movies made. A number of Sundance films, TIFF films, South by Southwest, a lot of the major festivals around the world, which felt like this amazing hallmark of achievement, coupled with a couple of kind of larger studio movies that, actually did pretty well. But I don't know if it was turning 40 or just not being the same person as I was when I started down this journey. having different responsibilities in terms of having my own family, and now wanting to make sure that I wasn't just fulfilling my own dreams, but I was doing something that had kind of enough longevity and future that it was going to give them all the possibilities that they wanted to have. But I think I just kind of at the end of the day felt that I wasn't interested in continuing to produce for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So I was at this crossroads of I'm not feeling satisfied by what I'm doing anymore. I don't know what else I would do. Everybody I know is in entertainment, and I don't even know how my skills would apply to anything else. So I was sitting one day with our financial advisor, who we've been with for a number of years and had really become a close friend. And I was just saying to him, Spence, I'm at this real turning point, and I don't know what the next chapter of my life looks like. I don't know what the next 10, 20, 30 years are, but I know I don't want to do what I've been doing. I want to pivot, and I'm kind of opening my doors and windows to the universe and seeing what comes back. But I know you deal with people in all different walks of life. And if you have anybody that like the things I care about, or I love working with people, I really care about environmentalism and social justice, and a lot of these kind of themes that are, I guess most people would probably classify them as a little bit more liberal or progressive. But I just said, if you know of anybody that is in this world, like just keep me in mind. And a couple weeks later, Spencer called me back and said, "Hey, we have an idea we'd love to run by you." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so I went and met with Spencer and his partner, Russell. And they said, we've really been wanting to launch an impact division at our firm. And we've been looking for somebody who kind of has a unique blend of skills, someone who knows what it is to be entrepreneurial, someone who has, a finance background, and someone who has relationships and a network within the creative community, because we think this idea of impact investing and investing with your values might really kind of philosophically appeal to creative professionals. And they said, "You're kind of the first person that we've come across in our search that actually has all three of those boxes ticked. And we wanted to run it by you. Like, what do you think? Would you want to maybe potentially come to Regatta and, become a financial advisor with us and launch this division?" And first I was totally kind of shell shocked, because the idea of going from producing movies to becoming a financial advisor just seemed, it was just not on my radar. It wasn't ever something that I would have seen coming. But the more I sat down and thought about it, and the more I kind of looked at both where my education had led me to and where my last 20 years of experiences led me to, all of a sudden, I always kind of joked about like, how on earth would I ever use a finance degree and a theater degree? And it was kind of like the universe just said, "Here you go. This is how." And it was like the last 30 years of my life all of a sudden just kind of made sense. And I just went, I don't know what this is going to be, but I love Spencer. I love Russell. I love the people at this company. And I'm going to like embrace the opportunity that's been put in front of me and put my trust in the fact that I know the most important, at this point in life, I figured out the most important thing is to work with good people who, have your back. And I really believed that was the environment I was stepping into. And honestly, it's just been the best thing I've ever done. It's been about 3 years now, and I wish I just found it earlier. Wow. So that's kind of my story.
So it sounds like it was perfect, and it was an easy transition, and away we go, right?
Piece of cake. Yeah. No, there was no bumps in the road at all. Smooth sailing all the way.
Lee, what was it that made you know you wanted to pivot? What was it that made you know you didn't want to keep doing what you were doing?
Gosh, I think I'd had a number of just really heartbreaking experiences in a few movies where either partners that I had put trust in, really burned me in pretty bad ways. Movies that I had spent years of my life on not kind of achieving the economic success that I wanted them to. part of it was feeling like the business had just changed so much from when I started. You know, people used to kind of say that our generation who kind of started the business in the late 90s was the last of the old Hollywood, because shortly after I started, the world started to change, and certainly around like 2006, 2007, with the financial crisis, and kind of the explosion of Netflix and then Amazon and streaming services, and all of a sudden content was very different than it had been. Hollywood stopped making movie stars around kind of 2000, and all of a sudden IP became kind of the star of the project. So it just,
what's IP?
I think it was
Lee?
Like if you have a book that something's based on, intellectual property.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So like some underlying thing that people already know about. Hey, we've got this great IP in this thing called Lego. Kids love Lego. People love Lego. Everybody knows Lego. Let's make a movie about it because people are inclined to go see something that they already know about and like, rather than like some story that's just brand new and original and nobody has any idea. There's comfort in the known. So kind of that explosion of IP-based content really started happening a lot.
And when you getting into the business, probably similar to a lot of us, was like, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s and seeing like kind of a little bit the heyday of like really independent films exploding.
Definitely.
And being like seeing things like, the stuff Tarantino did, the stuff, other people like that did, and saying, I want to do that. I want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I wanted to work in movies was because movies had been such a comfort and a touchstone to me as a teenager when I was dealing with, tough feelings,
right?
That a lot of people feel. And so like and being in theater, I was also just really I gravitated towards plays and, character driven stories. And all of a sudden people didn't really want to make those as much anymore. It really was more about superheroes, and that just that wasn't why I got into it. So I think I would say there were a lot of reasons that I just overall kind of became disillusioned with the business as a whole. But I knew, I think my wife knew before I did. She, for probably 2 years before I finally said I'm done, was saying, "You're so miserable. You hate this. I know you think you love it, but like as somebody looking in from the outside, you are so unhappy." And I think I kind of knew inside that she was right, but honestly, I didn't know what else to do. I was so deep down this hole.
That can be scary.
How to get out,
Lee, can you
and because in going back to that idea of identity, I had, since I was 10 years old, said, I am going to work in the movie business.
Right.
And once I got out here, it was, I am a producer and I am making my own movies at 27 years old. And I know I believed that being able to say that, like, it made me feel good about myself, put it that way. It made me feel special.
Well, there's a status to it, right? And it's not just you believing it, because you're getting that feedback when you go back home and visit and see family and friends, you're getting that feedback. Your ego's getting stroked. You're doing something sexy.
Mm-hmm. You know what's funny though? I don't think anybody else cared that much.
Mm-hmm.
I think I gave myself that positive feedback. But truth be told, I don't know that anybody really cared that I was a producer as much as I cared that I was a producer.
Do you know why part of that might be, though? Because if I had to guess, I would guess that people did think it was pretty cool that you were working in Hollywood, because it's out of the ordinary. I think that maybe they didn't care that you were a producer, because most people don't know what a producer does. Like we've all heard the producer term, but I've had it asked of me and sometimes had a hard time answering the question, Lee, like, okay, what does a producer do? So just really quickly, tell us what a producer does.
Well, it's a great question, because truly the title of producer has become so diluted over time. If you ask the PGA, which is the Producers Guild of America, what is a producer's job? They would say a producer is the person who originates the content, either by sourcing the rights to the underlying material, whether that's a book or another movie or an article, or somebody's life story. The producer is the person who then takes that and marries it with either a financier or another piece of talent, whether it's a director or a writer. The producer oversees the development of the script with that writer or director. The producer would then go out and attach talent, start to package the movie. And once kind of the movie is essentially greenlit, once the financier is a financier who says, yes, okay, we like the script and we like these actors and we like this director, and we'll put the money up, then the producer kind of becomes like the foreman on a construction site, in the sense that they go out and they hire all the key crew. So I would hire the costume designer and with the director, obviously, because the director would want to have creative input on who these people are going to be. But together, we would hire all the keys and department heads. And then the department heads would fill out their own departments, but we would work with a line producer to make sure the budget is in line with what the financier is willing to do. We would also work with the distribution agents, whether that's a domestic agent at a William Morris or a CAA who's going to help you sell the movie to a distributor, or a foreign sales agent who would essentially do the same job but help you sell the movie to foreign distributors all around the world. Obviously also overseeing post-production with the director, weighing in on the cut of the movie and the marketing of the movie and the music of the movie. And really kind of the producer, when you're talking about a producer, it's the person who's the first on and the last off of a movie. Unfortunately, lots of times there's 20 producers on a movie and 20 people can't do that job. So, you do end up with people who are either just writing checks and wanting to have that credit, or, representatives of actors who kind of navigate their way into that mix. So it's definitely understandably hard to determine who did what sometimes.
And that was the simplified version of what a producer is, AJ.
I was just thinking. So, like, actually, the producer to producer, the real producer on a project is like the helicopter parent of the film.
I was just going to say that, Lee. Yeah. You are the mom of the movie. You are like, the producer is the woman behind the curtain. You are the one making everything run, and you're up first and you go to bed last. And I mean, heck, what a job.
And you usually spend like 4 or 5 years at least working for no compensation. So you're kind of working on the come, and you've done all the heavy lifting by the time you get to the point that somebody says, okay, we'll pay you something, which is usually far below minimum wage when you average it out over the number of hours you put into this thing.
Huh. So to get a full picture then of where you are in this crossroads in your life, it's, it's a creative job. It's an exciting job. You're meeting interesting people, creative people. You're doing, you're in the industry that you dreamed of being a part of. An important thing for people to understand is getting momentum in a career in the industry, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera or on the producing side. With each project, it's starting over, right? Like, and like Lee, you've had more success than many of the creative people I know, and yet I remember you expressing your frustration with, once you'd moved on from one project, that we all went to the movie theaters to sit and watch, right? Like, then it's back at zero and starting over again. So there is kind of a punishing aspect to what can seem like a sexy profession.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely true. And I certainly a lot of times felt that, my efforts would launch someone else's career or assist in launching someone else's career, but rarely ever, or I never felt like they really launched my own. Like, I used to tell people, I felt like every movie I would climb Mount Everest and I'd get to like the third step, which is about 10 meters from the peak, and I'd just be put on an escalator that took me all the way back down to the bottom.
Right.
And then it was just starting over. And every single time I never felt that the success I'd had on the previous film made the next one easier to get going, or it really did feel like starting over for 14, 15 years, which at the end of that, I just felt like I was ramming my head into a wall all the time.
You feel a little abused.
Like, where is this going? This doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Yeah, it's important.
Even in the success, even if I had like this big, massive success in some movie that sold for $20 million at Sundance, and hypothetically I net $1 million off of that. Now what? That was $1 million for 5 years of work. And now what? Now I got to go do that again
and cross your fingers.
I think it's I think it's just so much more common than we think. I mean, unless you are at the top of the entertainment chain. And this is what I love about this podcast. I finally have some experience in what we're talking about, and we all have a theater background. Lee, I mostly did theater for 10 years in New York City, but I dabbled a bit in film and TV. So we can all talk shop a little bit, but the career in theater or the career in film or producing is not like other careers where you slowly climb a ladder, from project manager to manager to et cetera, et cetera. It's just a constant roller coaster of up and down. I mean, I have a friend I worked with and he won a Tony in Jersey Boys. And then the next year he was, collecting unemployment for a few months because he was struggling to find a job. Yeah. I have other friends who got successful TV work and then a year of nothing. So you realize about 5 years in, that's how long it took for me, that you have to love it. You have to love it if you want to keep doing it. And then about 10 years in, you realize if you want to have any kind of a normal life, i.e. being able to cover your insurance or buy a home, you either have to find a way to make it successful or find an alternate career or side career because it's just so grueling.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really think if I think the best areas of the entertainment business for having a decent quality of life don't exist in front of the camera. They exist in the kind of more business side of it, the agency world, the attorney world, even management, because there is some sense of stability there. You work for a company and you're going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks to a certain degree, regardless of what happens with this project or that project. But certainly when you're on the content creation side of it and you put all of your eggs into this one project going and then the rug gets ripped out from you after 4 years because an actor's schedule changed and the whole thing just unravels in about 2 days, it's just heartbreaking. And that was the point at which I realized I deserved more out of life. And I just went, I don't want this life anymore. It's been great. I'm so glad I did it. I would have always regretted it if I hadn't tried. I'm really proud of some of the things that I got made, but it's time to turn the page.
But how long? But it wasn't that simple, right? To get to that point. Like it's a little bit of, and I hate to kind of frame it this way because it really can be such a fun, interesting career and industry to work in, but there are aspects of it that really are just, it seems almost built in like an abusive relationship. And
it is absolutely, and it's highly addictive.
Yes, that's the thing, is it's an abusive relationship that's highly addictive. And so you walk in and it's like, oh man, you're at the horse track and you won and you're like, I can do this. I'm on a roll. And so even when it's come time to, the healthy choice for you is to find something else. Like you said, it can take you a while to recognize that or to admit it to yourself or to want it to be true.
No, I think that I wished for years, I had failed miserably because I was in this place where I was like, I've been successful to a certain degree and successful enough to keep going. Yeah. If I had just fallen on my face after 3 years and not gotten a movie made, I was going to go back to business school at 27. I was taking. I
remember you came. You came to my house to study for the GMAT. Yeah, I remember that.
So it really, I was at that point then where I was like, I think I'm going to go back to get a graduate degree, and then I got a movie made, and then I got another, and then I got another, and another, and another, and it seemed like it was all headed to something. Yeah. Which was, I think, the part that made it so hard to walk away from. So even once I knew I don't want to do this anymore, this isn't good for me, I'm not happy, still didn't make it easy to walk away from, because my identity was so entrenched at that point, and being a part of this community.
And that's what I really want to get into, is that identity part of, I love when you said that you came to the realization that you deserved better, that you deserved more. And that, again, that really sounds like a relationship, right? That's not working for you anymore. Maybe it worked for you at one time. For me, the question was, am I still pursuing the goals that I had 10 years ago? Versus the goals that actually move me or motivate me or mean something to me now as a family man, as an older, really as a man,
And he also commented, Lee said how much your identity was wrapped up in your career. It wasn't I am Lee Clay. It was I am a producer. So it sounded like that was a very strong shield around you that took credit to your wife, some outside perspective to help you recognize that identity might need to be shed.
Definitely.
So then you got this.
I remember.
Go ahead, Lee.
Sorry, go ahead. I remember you guys probably know the Fleetwood Mac song "Landslide."
Sure.
Yeah.
And I remember we lived in an area of Laurel Canyon, and kind of behind our house, there's this really beautiful, amazing view of the city. And I remember I used to take the dog up there when I was kind of going through these early stages of transitioning. And I just walk at night and I just listen to that song over and over and over, because it felt so poignant to like where I was in life. This song about getting older and things changing and not being able to hold on to the past as much as you may want to in some respects. I'll never forget just those walks and all the different feelings that were just swirling around at that time.
And so then this great opportunity comes up, right? That seems perfect. Mm-hmm. It seems right in line with everything you've been doing and the experience you've been building, the connections you've been making, plus another interest that you have, the finance world. And so, at the kind of nuts and bolts level, it all was like perfect. It's the square peg and the square hole. But tell me about the emotional journey, the identity journey. Were there questions that you still had to kind of deal with or ask yourself as you made this professional transition and shed that very powerful past identity?
Yeah, no, I remember having to go out and buy like pants, like office attire. I didn't own anything like that. And I was trying on these like pants and just going like, I feel like I'm dressing up in a costume. Right. Just like, whoa, how do I make this feel like me? And for so long, I every time I look in the mirror and my new kind of office attire, I just felt like I was looking at my dad or somebody from the more conventional world that I never saw myself being a part of.
That had to be tough.
Definitely. Yeah, it was. That was the hardest part. Was it was one of those things where even though like I knew in my head, I believed in my head that this all made sense, my heart wasn't there yet. And I definitely easy a year. And I think also just because starting into this new profession that I didn't have a track record in, and literally starting from zero, like a 22-year-old out of college, was really tough, because I felt like I had spent 20 years in an industry, getting to the point where I really felt established. And so now going to a place where I felt very unestablished was really scary. And why would anyone trust me to manage their money? What do I know?
Right.
So there was definitely a real blank slate start over that I had to do. And I had to basically go back to school and take the Series 65 and learn about all these things that I hadn't thought about in 20 years in terms of kind of the history of finance and how all this stuff works. So it was a lot in that first year.
And it sounds like a combination of like a little bit of an identity ego blow, like looking in the mirror and now I'm dressing conventional. I look like my dad and his friends. You know, the very thing that I either overtly or covertly rejected when I said I'm going to go be an artist. And then also this, you know, which I think we all feel from time to time, this imposter syndrome of like, why would somebody trust me when now I'm pretending to be this, you know?
Right.
And then also having to humble yourself and walk into, you know, taking these classes and learning something new. You know, that whole thing that you just described made me think of something that I hadn't thought of in conjunction with this conversation, which is, it made me think of like the Midwestern factory workers or steel workers or people where the industries went away. And we often can so kind of, you know, almost flippantly say, well, just learn how to do something else. Go back to school, learn how to code. Right. You know, it's a new world, catch up to the new world, move to where there's jobs. That's so hard.
Easier
for
said
an
than
adult.
done.
Oh my
So
God,
hard.
man. There's, I mean, so many challenges, to identity and to the, you know, how an adult has walked through the world and provided for their family. And now you're just back to zero and nothing, man. That's like, wow. I really kind of drew a parallel there for me as you were talking.
Sure. Well, and the other thing that I remember feeling really, really acutely was the illogicalness of how I felt like a failure.
Yeah.
Deeply, because even though I had, you know, made all these movies and had a movie win the weekend and be like the highest grossing movie in the United States for a weekend and stood on stages at Sundance and Toronto and won all these awards. And even though I had all of these like hallmarks of success, the fact that I was walking away from it, I processed as I failed. And
amazing?
I was terrified that I would just fail again and again and again. What if I fail at this new thing? I don't know. What if it doesn't work? You know, I was terrified about, and I think just feeling really unconfident in my ability to like believe in myself at that point, which was another piece of that transition that was really brutally tough.
And this goes back to the question of how do we define success? And Lee, if I can play devil's advocate for a minute, there have been 3 comments you've made since recording this podcast with the implication that you didn't somehow reach some sort of successful goal. You said something about how you tried as though you didn't make it to some point. You said something earlier about success. And this is just kind of an open question. What is success for you? Because when I hear about your career, I see it as highly successful, regardless of where it ends or how it ends.
Thank you. You know, I heard this. I'm gonna steal someone else's comment because I just thought it was so brilliant. And when I heard this person answer the question, I was like, yes, that's how I want to answer it next time somebody asked me that. Because I thought they were so on the money, which is at the end of my life, I think success is having more people say you did well by them than people who said you were an a-hole. And I was like, that's a great mark of success. I mean, ultimately, like I believe success, as much as it's so easy to believe success is all about monetary success and everything else, like I really do. And what I love so much about the job I do now is the feeling that like I'm taking care of people. And finance, obviously, as an industry, is not exactly probably one that people would rank highly on the trustworthy scale for good reason. But you know, aside from that, what I get to do every single day, I feel really good about. You know, I really feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives. I feel like I'm helping people navigate really tough decisions. I feel like I'm helping people make choices early enough that really not only has the ability to change their lives over 30 or 40 years, but can also change the lives of their kids and their grandkids. And so I feel a lot of responsibility for that. But to me, success is truly leaving it better than you found it. And, you know, I think looking back, I'm not sure, while I thought being a movie producer was doing that from the beginning, while I thought like, hey, I want to tell these stories that are going to like make people's lives better in some way or make them feel more understood or make them feel some form of shared compassion. I don't know that any of those movies ever actually achieved that goal. Maybe they did for some people, but I certainly wouldn't go so far as to say that those movies changed the world. And while I wouldn't go so far as to say what I'm doing now is necessarily changing the world, it's changing a handful of lives pretty dramatically, which is the thing that just makes me love getting out of bed every day.
You know, that's so funny though, man. And it's such a cliche. I mean, I think it was captured so well in of all things, Team America, World Police.
Oh my goodness, where are we going with this?
I cannot believe you're right.
I can't.
As with all things, the South Park guys have really encapsulated this. All right. But with the actor character saying he's going to save the world with his acting. And it's such a funny cliche, but dude, I've got to embarrassingly admit that when I decided, finally I'm going to not use this law degree and I'm going to go give it a go. And I think I can do something. There was this importance. There was this, it's not just, I want to go make people laugh. It was, I want to really go impact the world with something that I believe I have a talent in. And it can sound so self-important.
I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
But I get it, because in the same way, I was never interested in being an agent or a manager or a development person. I wasn't interested, and this is my own shortcoming, in just being kind of successful in one of those, because there's too much anonymity in it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be someone.
Yeah.
I wanted to be my own entity that people knew what that was, like my own brand to a certain extent. And that was my own ego, obviously. And now looking back, I realize how much my ego what a role it's played in all my decisions to this point, and how damaging some of those decisions were. Really not what I needed at all. They were the antithesis of what I needed. I just couldn't see that because I was so blinded by my ego.
Me too, man.
So it really, the last few years have been a little bit of a journey. And, I got into a period where I was really, really good about meditating, and I was, doing a lot of study and listening to a lot of kind of Buddhist thought leaders. And obviously ego is a big piece of that. And, I kind of fell off of that, unfortunately, over the last year and a half with the pandemic and having 2 young kids at home. But it really, I think I learned a lot from, that period of time about kind of how destructive our egos can be. And I would say the last couple of years for me has really been a journey of learning to let go of that.
That's so interesting, man. And I know that because, we're close friends and we've talked a lot. You were, would it be correct to say you were a little bit of a shy kid, or just kind of more to yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was never a superstar in certainly like elementary school, when really the only avenue for kind of standing out was sports, at least in Dallas, Texas it was.
Right.
And I was always okay at sports, but I was never exceptional. And so for that reason, I felt kind of on the fringe of this. I never felt like I was fully entrenched in the world of the cool kids. I never felt like I was fully entrenched in the world of the quote unquote not cool kids. I felt like I lived in this kind of gray zone between. I was always a smart kid. I always did well in school. I was okay at sports, but I never felt like I had anything that really made me stand out until I fell in love with acting and was really kind of nurtured by my high school theater teacher. And all of a sudden I kind of felt like, hey, I've got that thing now where, I use this word very cavalierly, but I'm the best at this. Within our high school, there's me and one other guy, and we're always the two leads, and we're doing these competitions, and I'm winning these best actor awards, and I got a lot of validation in that. And so I think for me, I finally felt I found the thing that I was really good at, because I wasn't really good at football, I wasn't really good at baseball or basketball. So once I kind of found that, I was I was head first into it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense, man. That role that validation plays. Britt, do you think that that's a particularly male need, or do you think it? Tell me what you're thinking.
Oh, it's been going back and forth in my head. I think ego drives everybody.
Yeah.
But I think it weighs more heavily on men for sure. And I was just thinking about what you guys were saying, these ego-driven career decisions. It's just fascinating how strong the ego is in influencing your decisions, usually for bad, right? In my career, the best decisions I made was when I let go of the ego and looked at just what I thought would be best for myself or what I wanted for myself, right? So,
but what if your ego's telling you what if the ego's whispering in your ear, this is what's best for you. Well, this is what you need. Show them. You're going to show everybody.
My woman's intuition was just better than that, man. I'm telling you. No, like, let's see. For example, I got offered to be part of the first production of Titanic, after it ran on Broadway. Mm-hmm. And then the first production of a theater show after it runs on Broadway is a big one. Usually the same producers and directors and half the cast will follow. And it's a big to do and you make lots of good connections, right? At the same time, I was offered a leading role in a Stephen Sondheim production. Mm-hmm. And if you care about theater, you do not say no to Stephen Sondheim, or if you care about good theater. But the optics, and they were using the ego to try and convince me to take this role because I said no to them, and they called me back and said, "Do it again." They said, "Come do it. We'll give you your equity card. You'll get an agent for sure." They said, "Come do this with us." Mm-hmm. And I let go of the optics. I let go of how it would look to anyone else because anybody else would say, "What are you thinking? Take the Titanic job." I let go of that and I looked at what I thought would be best for me and what I wanted. And in my heart, what I really wanted was to do a fantastic opus character in this smaller production. Yeah. That probably didn't give me any connections, but built myself up and built my own feelings of success within myself and helped me become a better actor and a better person.
Kind of sounds really self-contained, and not looking for that outside validation.
Right. And that's the kind of success that we haven't talked about yet. And I love Lee's definition of success as, more people thinking you're great than thinking you're an asshole at the end of life. Yeah. But I feel like there also has to be an internal level of happiness within yourself, regardless of what others think, especially when you're making decisions. I'm gonna be geeky and bring up a quote real quick. This is about strong women, but since we touch on gender roles a lot, I'm gonna change it and refer it to men.
Thank you for that.
So this is talking about what makes a strong woman. So often in our world, we tend to think of strength as a quality that arises from a place of firm determination and a will to succeed no matter the cost. Even though we might want to think of a strong person as being defined in this way, what really makes a person confident is his or her capacity for listening to his or her true self and being able to call upon his or her wisdom to any situation that may arise. And that really struck me in the terms of success because I think success has to include your ability to not only listen to yourself, and like you said, Lee, you heard yourself, but it took years and outside perspective from your wife and others to actually acknowledge that truth, to listen to yourself and honor that truth of what it is that you really want or what it is that you really feel is right and follow that regardless of the optics.
There's so much noise in the world, right? That can, and in life, modern life, maybe pre-modern life as well, of like what the ego needs. Whether do you want to be the best hunter, the best warrior, the best provider, the best lover, all this stuff that I have found in one, I guess in one iteration or another has whispered in my ear through a lot of my adult life and what was driving me. And it's funny, then I circle back around, and it even took me a while to learn the fullness to which this is true. That whole ridiculous cliche notion of changing the world because you're going to become an actor, or an artist, which can be true. Like I giggle at it, but I also do think it can be true. You touch people, and you leave them changed.
Great films, great theater, teach beautiful lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
It came, I slowly realized that my journey of leaving this world a better place was, again, it's going to sound so cliche, but my role as a father and what I was putting out in the world in that regard, and the experiences that I was providing in that regard was really my deep fundamental change in the world. But even then I struggled, even making the move away from Hollywood, away from LA, where I'd spent 20 years in New York or LA. And even though a lot of my time in LA wasn't that artistically satisfying, I was just doing commercials. I was still peripherally kind of in those circles and, meeting interesting people like Lee Clay. That fed my ego. And then making a move away for lifestyle, a move that was a good move. The part where I really struggled with it, and in my first year almost like raged against it, was now I'm not in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
What does that mean about me?
Who am I now? Yeah.
I remember going out to dinner with a nice couple that we had met through school, and we went out with them once or twice socially. And he was a manager for Hertz Car Rental, a regional manager for Hertz Car Rental. And I remember sitting at the table across from him and just thinking to myself, holy shit, people do that for a living.
What a dick.
I know, for sure, right? Like this is why this is part of the secret sauce of this podcast is where we expose ourselves as for the dicks we are.
Absolutely.
But I remember literally thinking that. I was like, nice guy, funny guy, but I remember thinking, wow, people do that for a living. Of course they do. I mean, of course, like more people than not, right? But you live in this kind of rarefied air, even though it's unhealthy for you. It's not working for you, but it's rarefied air, so it feels good, and you rage against it. And I didn't completely drop it until, I go back to this from time to time. You probably know what I'm going to say, Britt, until I did an ayahuasca circle. Wow. And it dissolved my ego so completely in that moment that I felt like for the first time in my adult life, I was standing as my true self within my own power, not being given by outside validation or outside forces. It was like the sun. I was generating my own power.
That's a serious fucking mushroom, man.
Dude.
I am envious.
How much of a kickback are you getting from the ayahuasca industry?
Yeah. Well, listen. So if anyone would like, please call 1-800-FLY with me. But it can be, it can be so powerful. And I think you're right, Britt, that it does seem to play a particular role in men's lives, I guess, just in the way informed by the way society is organized, or is it something innate within us, or a combination of the two?
Yeah.
I tend to always kind of go with a combination. That is like how we need to define ourselves is also in how the tribe sees us.
Right.
Lee, how did go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to AJ's comment about exposing ourselves as dicks. Yes, I completely relate to that too, because when you were telling that story, I totally recognize how I used to separate myself. And it really goes back, I think, when I really now being able to kind of take a deeper step back and look at kind of the postmortem of those 20 years, I do realize that it really was all a search for self-acceptance and trying to get to a point where, as much as I kind of thought, like on the surface, it was about getting validation from others, really at its core, it was about getting validation from myself.
Interesting.
Because I think I spent a long time not feeling like I was worthy or a valuable person. I needed this external validation to fill that hole.
Wow. Yeah.
And so stepping away from that, that's why I think stepping away from it was ultimately so painful, but also so healthy, because now I can sit down, or I can see that person who manages the hurt as an important contributing member of society who, is no better or worse than anybody else, where there was a point in time where I elevated my own self and my own status in the world because I was doing this thing in Hollywood and doing this thing with movies. Did
you have that realization slowly, or was it like a moment where you're like, oh shit, this is what was driving me?
Oh gosh, can it be both?
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of times, people will have the realization fairly quickly, but coming to accept that realization and integrate it into their lives, that's what takes time.
The integration, that's the hard part.
Yeah. Lee, how did your wife, how were your personal relationships affected during this transition?
Well, I would say, it was a long transition. It felt like a 2-year transition. I really just feel like I emerged from the transitional phase of it 6 months ago, where now where it really feels like that's all in the rear view, and this is now who I am and what I'm doing. Or maybe I should take that step back. It's not who I am. It's just what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
But she was thrilled. I think she also had questions about financial advising. This is definitely a different path. But I think I was the one who really was like, I think this is going to work. I think this is good. I saw it as a really good opportunity. So she was really thrilled that I was embracing just a new path. The thing that was really interesting to me, and I literally just thinking about this yesterday or maybe the day before, was when I stepped away from entertainment, no one noticed. None of my entertainment relationships noticed. Nobody was like, "Hey, where you been?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to you in a while."
Yeah.
It was like I just vanished without anybody even noticing. And that really, to me, there's an aspect of that that's disappointing, but at the same time, there's an aspect of it that's affirming that these weren't real relationships that you fostered over 15 years. They were transactional and they were convenient, and they only existed to the point that you could do something for somebody else,
right,
or forward somebody else. They weren't real friends. They weren't real colleagues. They weren't people who had your back at all. So there was I would say maybe confirmation that I made the right decision in that, because now the relationships I have in my new career are so deep and are so intimate, which I am a person who really thrives on having deep, intimate relationships. And I realize that the more that I have, the happier I am. So now being able to be in people's lives in a way that's, really connected and personal, and, people have to be really vulnerable and exposed with me and talking about where they're at financially, or the mistakes think they've made, or the things they wish they'd done differently, or where they want to be and how do they get there. I love being an advisor to people in that way. I love being a friend. I love feeling like I'm, some little tiny part of their family, and ultimately doing something or helping them do something that's going to change their lives forever.
It sounds like for however much, we all need some kind of external validation or feeling like we're making a difference. It sounds like now you're getting more high octane fuel. You're getting better fuel in that regard, versus kind of maybe the running on fumes. That kind of felt like real fuel, but maybe not really.
Well, and I think it's so easy when you're talking about, being an actor or doing something that feels kind of grand, to think that you're going to change all these people's lives all at once. You're going to have this dramatic impact, when all you're kind of doing is just sprinkling the surface. You're only watering the top half inch of soil to a certain extent, in a way that maybe gets everything a little wet for a minute, but it almost immediately dries out and needs to be wet down again in order to keep moving forward. Whereas what I feel like I've found now is a way to really deeply water one thing and really help it grow,
right.
Which is, to me, infinitely more satisfying and infinitely more impactful than just sprinkling the surface once in a while.
And you're talking about not just in helping people with their financial health, but in a way that is also ostensibly helping the world, right? Sustainable.
Yeah. We haven't even touched on this, but yes, the whole kind of business model here is double bottom line, in the sense that everything we use either, at the very least, excludes things like fossil fuels and guns and predatory lending and things that are, kind of inarguably bad for people, and then takes another step forward to embracing things that, are promoting diversity or promoting, environmental sustainability or, social responsibility. So yes, we strive to help people grow. And we found a way that we can do that where people don't have to sacrifice their returns, but can still invest in things that align with their values. And I don't want to say like, oh yeah, like you're going to save a species of penguins by investing in this, but I do think it's every little drop in the bucket helps. And if everybody can embrace this and say, hey, you know what, let's put our money where our mouth is a little bit. And if we believe we want a cleaner environment, let's invest in renewable energy instead of buying shares of ExxonMobil. That little by little does add up. So, and it helps a lot of people just sleep better at night because they don't want to be hypocrites, and they do realize the importance of growing their savings for, a future retirement or a day where they can't continue to actively earn the same income, but they don't want to be that person who's talking about one thing, but then, making a quick buck another way.
Right.
That's so great. It sounds like your past career just was held up on false connections. It was like a little toothpick house of status for you. Mm-hmm. And now you're doing work that's more impactful. It just makes me think how careful we have to be not to let what we do define who we are. I think I even said that in the last podcast. Mm-hmm. This is why meditation is so valuable, because you start to just care less and less and less what the American culture thinks of as value and success, and you just care about your own self-worth. And I think it sounds like you're in a place, Lee, where the work that you do is validating who you are and who you've become, but it doesn't define who you are and who you've become. Definitely. That sounds like a pretty sweet spot to be in.
Which was the exact flip of my past life. It absolutely defined everything, and I wasn't being validated. I mean, maybe like momentarily validated, but not in like a really holistic way.
But without that past life and that past path, you aren't where you are now, right? Is totally. Like another lesson in, it's not a mistake. It's not, I wish I could go back and do it differently. It's, you have your path, and absolutely. can you be open to recognizing opportunities and doors as they swing open, and can you be, I guess, brave enough or curious enough to step through at least some of them?
Absolutely. And the foundation for launching this new business, which, has been growing so much faster than I ever imagined possible, has been because a number of the handful of people that ended up revealing themselves as true friends and as, people that are going to be in my life forever, came with me in a sense. And so, the bottom rung of my client base now started out as, a young woman who was an intern for us in 96 Minutes.
Oh, wow.
Now going on to like a giant job at Netflix. Another friend that I worked with on a movie who's now, a really successful studio executive, managers, agents, some attorneys. These were people who I didn't necessarily expect would play such a large role in my life when I met them, but have now become some of my, favorite people. And I wouldn't have had those relationships had I not had that 20 years previously.
It's important to be thankful for the whole journey, I think, right? Even the downturns and the pain and and the whole thing, like the whole journey is part of your journey. And then in the end, if you get to, help out, save some penguins, then all the better. Right? I mean, penguins delicious. I had to say that because Marty's not here, and that's exactly what Marty would have said.
That is what he would say.
Thanks for coming on and joining us, man, and for being willing to open up and kind of talk about the emotional aspects of a big change in life like that. Because honestly, I think it doesn't take someone leaving the entertainment industry to feel like that kind of experience applies to them as well. I think, we have Britt sitting in the room who had a huge change in identity and how she identified herself in her adult life. And I think a lot of people go through that or struggle with it or feel like they want to change and aren't sure that they can do it. How we define ourselves, it can just be, I'm a truck driver and that's what I do. I think that it's something that anyone can find a connection with.
Well, I thank you guys for letting me come on. I mean, it's been really fun to chat with you as always. And I'm really looking forward to doing ayahuasca with you one weekend soon.
We will make it happen, dude.
Thank you so much, Lee. If I ever make any kind of enough money to qualify, I'll give you a ring.
Please do. Please do.
Take care, buddy.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay,
thanks,
bye-bye.
Man. I mean, don't you think that like anybody can, or maybe not anybody, but a lot of people can, what's the word I'm looking for? Can empathize or can connect with that kind of experience of just how we define ourselves.
Yeah, there's parallels everywhere. And if it's not a definition of career, it's a definition of self, whether a definition of motherhood or your role in your family. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And that making that next step as an adult, making that change, it can be hard, but just got to be brave and not afraid of failure. And when he said he realized he felt like a failure. And the next thing that he would try, would he fail again? I felt the same thing, like very similarly. Like I felt like a failure. I hadn't reached the heights that I wanted to reach. And so I felt like a failure. And if I tried something else, I was afraid of failing again. So I spent years frozen. Again,
though, based on that definition of failure. Isn't that interesting? Like, look at all the major successful billionaires. How many of them tried and failed multiple times before they got to any kind of, success? But
exactly. Going back to how we define one legitimate way of defining success, right? Monetary success, but not the only one.
Yeah.
But it's true. Get back on the horse. Get back on the horse.
That fear is so powerful, though. It is so hard to find that courage.
Yeah. But isn't it like maybe it's somebody that has had a marriage that has, failed, right? Quote unquote. This marriage failed. I've been thinking about terms like that lately, like why we say a marriage failed. Maybe it was a relationship that only had a shelf life of a certain amount of time. It plays a role in your life.
Yeah.
Right? Why do a divorced family? Why do we call it a broken family? Jesus.
Yeah. Very fair perspective. And a lot of the younger generation are ignoring those terms now.
Yeah. I
have a acquaintance who was divorced in California. She is so supportive of her husband. He's a great dad. They consider their marriage as far as that family unit a success. Yeah. Because they co-parent so well.
Right.
So they don't look at it as a failure. They just look at it as a transition.
Which again goes back to identity, how we identify ourselves as a success, as a failure, as a this, as a that, right? Like letting that blow apart or at least expanding the room to let other possibilities in. So valuable.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this one up and let's end it with Marty, we love you, buddy. I know it's a tough time. Fuck, man. Just like 2 episodes in a row where I cry at the end.
Because you're brave with your emotions, man. And you're a Californian.
Yeah, well.
I'm going to give you a 5-minute hug at the end of this.
Are you stoned?
I wish.